Welcome back to another episode of the Heart Podcast. My name is Jagraj Singh Lalli, and joining me on the show today is once again someone I consider one of my good friends. You know, the last few episodes we've had a lot of great people on here, but this is someone I really consider one of my good friends. Gotten to know each other a lot over the past couple of years or so. Blake Milton, who also works in the Pacific Junior Hockey League as well, among many other things. So, Blake, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jag. I really appreciate that intro. Yeah, I think we've become pretty close over the past few years, really. You and I don't really get an off season away from each other. We spend our time together at the rink, and then in the spring and summer, we spend our time together at the lacrosse box. So it's really good, and it's been awesome to meet you, and I'm so glad to see you moving up, and I'm so excited to see what you have in store for the future.
No, and likewise, Blake, you know, we're constantly on this path, on this trajectory towards continuing to improve and hone our craft, but that's something we'll get into later on. First off, just tell me, how has your summer been? Like you said, we don't really get an off season away because there's so much to do during the summer as well, but just that time away from the rink, how have you enjoyed spending that time?
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, I spend my time away from the rink, kind of at the rink anyways. I'm pretty big into ball hockey reffing here in the community and stuff like that. So that went until about the middle of July there, and then almost the end of July actually. And then when I wasn't at the rink, I was like I said, I was at the lacrosse box more times than not with you doing some PA announcing, but. If I'm not at either one of those places, usually I just spend it with my girlfriend and my stepson, and we like to do the typical summer stuff, go out to the beach, go catch fireworks whenever we can, go out to the Vancouver Canadians, stuff like that.
No, and that's always a nice way to keep yourself engaged, keep yourself always doing something. You know, ever since I began this career, and I know you can attest to this as well, we don't like staying at home. We don't like having free time at all. Like, you know, that's time okay. It's okay to spend time with family and everything, right? But we always want to keep ourselves doing something so that we can continue to feel busy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm always that way. I'm the type of person where like I don't like to sleep in. There's the odd time where like I sleep in till 11:30, 12, whatever it is, and I get up and it's almost like I have to do something right away because I feel like I've almost wasted half the day.
100%, and I can attest to that as well. I'm always the type of guy that likes to, you know, wake up, get my workout in early, done in the day, just so it kind of awakens me up and gets me ready for the rest of the day. But, you know, looking back on the start of all this, Blake, you know, you've been a hockey fan for quite some time now. You've been a
Mhm.
sports fan for quite some time. Just take me back to that first day where your love for sports began.
Honestly, Jag, like I can't really name or pinpoint one thing. Like it's pretty much since I can remember. I've always been a sports fan. Like my uncle, he's had season tickets for the BC Lions my whole life. I have my own season tickets now. I've had them for about 10 years. So we've kind of gone to games together. Um, Probably my earliest sports memory is the 2002 Olympics, Canada and USA in Salt Lake City there when Joe Sakic won the game. And of course, the famous Bob Cole, who's now since unfortunately passed on not too long ago. But Bob Cole said, that'll have to do it. That'll be it for Canada. And that was the gold medal game. That was probably one of my earliest memories. And then going back to the mainland, probably one of my earliest sporting memories that I remember is that uncle that I share season tickets with for the BC Lions. He got tickets to a Canucks game, and I don't remember the score, or the date, or anything like that. But I do remember that the Canucks were playing the Dallas Stars, and after that, it's just been kind of going ever since.
And you take that love for for sports, you take that passion that you have for sports, and then you decide, okay, I have this love and passion for it. How can I expand my role? How did your broadcasting journey begin?
Yeah, really. Broadcasting has been something that I always wanted to get into. Like, even when I was like 9, 10 years old, and you're in school there, and your teachers are like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "I want to be a sports broadcaster." And they're like, "Nah, like that's a good goal to have, but like you kind of got to be more realistic." And it's like there's not a lot of people that get to live out a dream like you and I do, and they're like, I'm like, nope, that's what I want to do. Like there is no second option. I want to be a sports broadcaster. So I went from that, and I kind of gotten involved in the league. Like my dad was the safety guy for a little bit there with my elementary school, and he got in touch with, at the time, what was the North Delta Devils. They of course moved to Langley when they were the Knights. They're now the Surrey Knights. I'm still with that team. They had a couple players come out to some events that we had at school. I forged a connection with some of those players. And when I was about 13 or 14, they said, "Hey, look, like, you want to get involved in the game? Like, we need a water boy. Like, are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." So, really, that's how I started. I started with the Devils as a water boy there and kind of moved up. I was with them for a while. I was with the Langley Knights. I was kind of their penalty box attendant slash timekeeper for probably about 5, 6 years. And then my first real broadcasting, well, it was twofold. So the first time was the Vancouver Canadians. Rob Fay, the former broadcaster there, he brought me up into the booth, and I kind of was able to learn from him. And I was unable to get on the air, but I was able to do some scorekeeping and stats like that and stuff like that. And then I got a message from somebody that I still work with at the Steelers. Brett Vo, he does the photography for the Steelers. You know him a little bit. He does our social media and stuff like that. And he reached out and he said, "Hey, like, we're looking for a color commentator to join our team." Former assistant coach John McDade was the color commentator at the time, and he was moving his roles down behind the bench with Aldo Bruno. So I kind of went in with the Steelers, and Gaetan and I have kind of been together ever since, and it's led to a few more opportunities and some few more jobs since then.
And I mean, you talk about, let's backtrack a little bit to your time spent with the Surrey Knights. So this is from a very young age, I'm assuming. This is from when you were in school, when these players visited the school, and that's when you kind of realized, okay, I'd love to work in this organization. So it's probably been quite a while.
Yeah, no, it's been if I had to do the math on it, I think it's probably been over 14 years of my life. So over half my life now, Jag, that I've been involved in the PJHL. I was still in elementary school when I first met them. But I think when I first started working with the team, I was about I think grade 9, so maybe I just turned 14, 15 years old, somewhere around there. And I've been in the league ever since. I've joined some few teams. I've left a couple teams since then, but I've always stayed with the Knights firstly, and then the Steelers for the past 6, 7 years.
You talk about working in the Surrey Knights organization, the organization, the community of Surrey, we know how much Surrey loves their hockey. We know how proud they are to be able to, have players from hockey, especially play in the NHL. Arch D.
Hmm.
Bain's an example last year. Surrey-born kid got to play for the hometown team, and we saw the streets of Surrey, how happy they were during the playoffs. Scott Road 72nd. It's iconic for their celebrations, for how happy people get. But when you really think about what the Surrey Knights mean, the Surrey Knights of the PJHL, what they mean to the community, what comes to mind?
Oh man, Jag, that's a really good question because you kind of know the story maybe a bit more so than some of your other listeners, but it wasn't, and it's still not perfect. Will admit that as an organization, it's not where we want it to be just yet, but we're getting there. It was a long road. Like when I started working with the Devils, we lost in game 7 of that first year, round 1. We got swept the year number 2. We missed the playoffs year number 3, and then year number 4 we got swept again, and kind of everything went downhill from there because we moved to Langley, and that first season was really good. We made the playoffs again, unfortunately falling to the Mission City Outlaws. And then that second season in Langley is kind of when everything changed. And we don't need to get into too many details, but of course, there was that kind of infamous brawl and league sanctions and whatever. And again, I'm not at liberty to speak about that. But there was some really tough times in Surrey. We, of course, won, I think it was 4 games, maybe the rest of that season. We won 5 or 6 the next season. And then we moved to Surrey, where our new rink, where it is now, just outside of Scott Road Station, wasn't ready yet. So we played at Surrey Central for 2 years. And that first year, we won, I think it was 2 games or something like that. And then the second year, we didn't win a game all year. We went 0-41-3, I think was our record. 3 overtime losses, and those were some really tough times because it was like the games weren't close for more times than not as well. And so when we had a close game, when we got into overtime, we thought, wow, maybe this is the game. Maybe this is it. And unfortunately, that season, it never was. The next season, we started with losing kind of, I think it was 15, 16 games in a row. And then I remember sitting in Ottawa at Grey Cup. I'm sitting in my hotel room. It was a Friday night. I believe it was like November 16th or 17th, something like that, 2017. And the Knights beat the Abbotsford Pilots 2-0. And it was the first time in, I think it was like 84 games or something like that, Jag, that the Knights had won a game. And they won a few more games that year. They won a few games the next year. And then everything kind of changed. Our friend, or at least my friend, I should say, John Craighead, who's still one of the owners of the team, he kind of took a back seat role, and he gave the team off the GM duties to Andy Lieber, or pardon me, to Jerry Leeper. And then eventually Andy Lebron came in, and Billy Thompson was there as a member of the team for a while. He was the captain in our final year when I think we won 8 games or something like that. And then he became an assistant coach. And 2 seasons ago, for the first time since that year in Langley, so I want to say like 8, 9 years, the Knights made the playoffs for the first time. They really pushed the Chilliwack Jets, especially in that first game of the Survivor Series. It went all the way to double overtime. Unfortunately, the Knights lost, and then the second game wasn't very close. And then this year again, they went to the playoffs, and again they lost in that Survivor Series. But as I said a couple minutes ago, Jag, the team's really looking up. So I guess this was my long-winded way of answering your question that Surrey is to the Knights kind of what Vancouver is to the Canucks. Like they've become a home to us. We're out in the community all the time. I know that play-on tournament is happening this weekend out in Surrey. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to attend, but I believe that some Knights players are going to be able to attend. I know that they've been making school visits and stuff like that. So they've really become a home to us, Jag.
We talk about tough times, Blake, and you just listed many tough times that the Knights had to go through. What inspired you to stay with the team despite those tough times?
Yeah, it was a lot. There was a few times where due to work commitments and stuff like that and whatever else, I was there was a couple seasons where I wasn't there as much, but they always made me feel like family there. They kept asking me. They said, We really need you. Like, we want you to come back. You're part of our family. We're not the same without you." And you hear that a lot in hockey circles and stuff like that, that it's family. But with the Knights, like, it really is true. Like, I know Jerry's son, Parker, he played with the Knights for a while. I still see him every once in a while. Like, John has 2 sons, Darian, who's playing professionally in Europe, and Tristan, who's trying to make it in music, actually. So they're still there as well. There's a lot of the same people I mentioned, Andy and Billy, and of course Jerry and John, that they've been there for the past like 10, 11 years now. So it's really the family aspect that's kept me going year after year.
And coming off of a season, I should make mention where, the Knights, the things are continuing to look up for them. what is your mindset or what are your thoughts on this upcoming season for the Surrey Knights?
Yeah, I'm really excited for the Knights this year. A bit of personal news. I think I might be, we haven't officially confirmed it yet, but I think I might be moving into the broadcast booth with our other pal, Jamie Sesford there. But for the Knights personally as a team, the goal is definitely to make playoffs again this year. And I know for a fact that they don't want to be in that Survivor Series, which means finishing top three in the Harold Brighton Conference. Is that a 500 record? Maybe that's a bit below. We don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see how the season plays. But definitely making the playoffs and going into that first round right away without having to play the best of three Survivor Series is a goal for the Knights this year.
And we talk about, you obviously, great story when it comes to the Surrey Knights, but you made mention you're also a part of the Grandview Steelers organization where you were serving as the color commentator, but this past season you got to slot in to the play-by-play commentator role as well, obviously with Gayton taking some time away from the team. What was it like having to make that transition into becoming the team's full-time voice?
Yeah, it was tough, Jag, because it was I was away for the first I believe it was two games of the season. I came back. Gaetan and we've had built quite a relationship. So we kind of just bounce off each other, and he says, "You know what, Blake? Like I'm gonna be away." He's originally from Winnipeg. That's where his family still resides. So he'll tell me, "Hey, I'm gonna be away in Winnipeg for the holidays. Like I need you to cover play by play for the two games over Christmas or whatever." Or I make a yearly trip out to Grey Cup, wherever that is, and he kind of knows that, and I tell him, and so last year I missed the first two games and I came back on the third game, and we just finished a game against the expansion Port Coquitlam Trailblazers, a game that the Steelers won quite handily. I believe the final score was 8-2 or 10-2, something along those lines. And we were walking back to the hut, as we like to call it, kind of the Grandview Steelers dressing room, and he stopped me and he said, "I have some news for you." And I said, "Oh." I said, "Is this good news or bad news?" And he says, "Well, it's kind of good news for you, but it's not so good news for me." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And not without going into any personal details, but Gaetan had to leave for some family stuff, and he had to be in Winnipeg for almost the entire season. So he said that, "You know what, Blake, like it's yours now. You're the full-time voice." And it was like, this is I didn't know how to feel about it at first, Jag, because it's always been my dream to be the full-time voice of a team. I've lived that out with a couple of teams in the BCEHL. Of course, as our buddy Joey and Jordan did before us and stuff like that. But it hadn't been that a PJHL team that I'd been the voice of. So it was kind of like a dream come true for me. But at the same time, it really I felt bad for Gaetan because Gaetan is someone that I've come to consider a really close friend. We've had a bond connected outside of the Steelers. And so it was really tough to see him going through some tough family times. But at the same time, it was really kind of neat to be able to do stuff like call the teddy bear toss goal, call the first goal of the playoffs, call the first and unfortunately only win of the playoffs for the Steelers. But that stuff was really cool. But it was, as I mentioned, it was kind of a love hate relationship with how I got the position.
I remember you talked about you being at the Grey Cup last year because I was actually brought in to do the one game that you were not here for as well.
Yeah,
And Gaetan had obviously gone, he had gone back to Winnipeg. So I remember that was my first ever PJHL game that I did. I was brought in to the Grandview Steelers to do that game on a Sunday night, I believe. I had no clue what I
yeah.
was in for, right? And I had no idea that a month later I'd be starting out with Richmond and Delta, but things just seemed to click at the right time. And it was a very fun experience for myself myself as well, getting to broadcast the game, obviously at the BWC, and seeing, everyone there from, the close volunteer relationships that are there, from everyone from our PA person, the coaches and everyone. It was such a nice experience, a fun experience to be a part of. And it's always a fun time at the BWC getting to cast a Grandview Steelers game.
Yeah, no, it really is like it's tough to describe because honestly, I don't think there's anything like the BWC when it comes to playoff time. Like the Bruno family, who's heavily involved with the Steelers. Of course, Aldo's no longer head coach, but he's still GM, and his wife Rose and his daughter Nadia. They're at almost every game, especially Aldo and Rose, and sometimes Natty has some other stuff going on, but I've gotten to know the Bruno family quite well over the past 6 or 7 years, and it's definitely something because for such a small arena, it can definitely get packed pretty big. And Rose brings cowbells that she brings out only for the playoffs, and it's just like it's so different because it's honestly, Jag, like a switch gets flipped from the last Sunday of the regular season, and sometimes due to arena availability or whatever else, the Steelers have to turn around and they have to play on a Wednesday, which is like 2 days later. And from that last regular season game, where it's kind of like another regular season game, more times than not, it doesn't really mean anything in the standings. There's a lot of AP players and stuff like that are playing in the game. And then all of a sudden, game one of playoffs come, and that arena, it's just, it's I can't find words right now to describe it in playoff time because it's definitely special. So it holds a special place in my heart.
I was recently speaking to Zach Clark, the voice of the White Rock Whalers, the team that the Grandview Steelers faced in the Survivor Series this past season. Now, I know you said you got to do that one game where the Steelers did win. Game three, however, was at Centennial Arena, and this game ended up going 5 hours, 6 hours. What would it have been like? I know where if I'm not sure if you were at the actual game or not, but did it ever cross your mind that when it went into all those overtimes, like, man, I wish I was behind the mic for this one?
Yeah, no, it definitely did. I was not at the arena. I was working that day at my full-time job. So I had I threw my AirPods in and I was listening to, as you mentioned, our buddy Zach Clark and your new color commentator, Liam Higgs. I was listening to their call of the game on Flow Hockey, and I came home and we were having that was the family day holiday as well. So we were having a family day dinner and stuff like that. And it definitely did cross my mind. There's two games that I can almost relate to Zach. One of them did involve the Steelers, and it was actually not this past season, but 2 seasons ago when the Steelers were in the Survivor Series against the North Vancouver Wolfpack. And game number 3 of that game or that series did go to overtime as well. That went to double overtime. And then there was some discrepancy, we'll say, about whether the game-winning goal went in or not. So that went into double overtime, and there was quite a delay. The Wolfpack were very unpleased with the final call. And then the only other game where I went into double overtime was game number 2 of the BC EHL Pacific Regionals. So it happened to be the Vancouver Northeast Chiefs and the Calgary Buffaloes, who had gone to overtime the night before. Calgary had won that game. Vancouver Northeast had to win the game to keep the series alive and their chance of advancing to the TELUS Cup. And they did end up winning that game. So that was the only game that I've gotten to be play-by-play for that went more than one overtime. Gaetan and I kind of shared that other game, and Gaetan was behind the mic for that game-winning goal. So but to answer your question, it definitely did cross my mind. I even thought about it after work. I was like, man, it's going into, I think I ended work as it was going into the first overtime. And I was like, if I make it to White Rock now, I wonder if I'll be able to get there before the game ends. But of course, with overtime, you never know when that goal is going to be scored. So it's like, I'll just go home and I'll watch it on the phone, and it ended up being almost 2 hours later before the game-winning goal was finally scored.
And we look forward to the Steelers this upcoming season. Similar to the Knights, they know that they made it to the Survivor Series, but obviously the goal is to move on ahead and try and get up ahead. So, in your eyes, from a player's perspective, from an on-ice perspective, what can we expect from the Grandview Steelers this upcoming year?
Yeah, I think the Steelers are yeah, they're going to be quite similar to how they've been pretty much the entire time that I've been with the team. They'll roll out two 20-year-old goaltenders this year in Cheyenne Kermani and Ronan Garrity, or at least I think that's what they'll do. I haven't heard otherwise yet. But they're kind of they've always been built from the back forward, if you will, with the goaltending position and then the defense. Of course, with Cale Dolan, he was a 4-year starter when I first joined the team. And then Ronan and Cheyenne have kind of shared the net for the past probably 2, 3 seasons now. The defense will be steady as always. The one thing that I think the Steelers are going to try and get better at this upcoming season is to try and find a couple more true goal scorers, if you will. Unfortunately, one of the players that I've been with the entire time, he started as a 16-year-old. Luke Cox aged out of the league, so he's no longer a part of the team. They've lost a couple forwards, and that was something that the Steelers really had trouble with last year, especially in that Survivor Series. Like they won that first game 1-0, and then they lost the second game 5-1, and they lost, of course, that last game in triple overtime 4-3. So definitely goal scoring is probably going to be the top priority for GM Aldo Bruno and the Steelers staff. For a season outlook, I would think that it's probably very similar to the Surrey Knights. They don't want to have to go to that Survivor Series again. They want to get into the playoffs outright for the first time in 4 seasons, and then go up against those traditional powerhouses in the Delta Ice Hawks and Richmond Hawkeyes and kind of see where the chips fall.
Your time in the PJHL, Blake, as you made mention, it opened a bunch of other doors for you, including the BC Elite Hockey League. Tell me how your time in the BC EHL started.
Yeah, so I was originally the play-by-play voice for what ultimately turned out to be a season with the Vancouver Northeast Chiefs. And I just kind of saw an Instagram ad that they were looking for a play-by-play broadcaster. I reached out to the team. I said, "Hey, here's my resume." At the time, I was working with just the Steelers and the Knights, and they brought me in. They said, "What do you want to do? Like we have U15 teams, U17 teams, and U18 teams." And I said, "I want to do it all." And they're like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to do it all." So I called many games for the U15s and the U17s. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, the U18s, they actually won the league that year. So they went to the Pacific Regionals, which they won. They went to the TELUS Cup, which was the national championship at the time. Me and my girlfriend took a trip out to Okotoks, where it was being held that year. The Chiefs, unfortunately, weren't able to capture the TELUS Cup. They finished, I believe, 5th. And then, unfortunately, due to one reason or another, the things didn't work out with the team, and I was out of the league for a year. And then last year, I got reached out to by someone that actually started with the Knights again at the time, which was the Devils organization when I was probably year 2. He was a 20-year-old that year. He was quite prevalent on the team. He ended up coaching me in ball hockey as well. His name is Julian Fajo. And he was also a coach for White Rock for a little while, an assistant coach. And the kind of a similar thing, I saw on Instagram that they were looking for a play-by-play broadcaster for their U15 and their U17 teams, as of course our buddy Jordan had full reins at the time of the U18s. And then so I applied, and they had an interview, and they offered me the position. So it was very cool. I did quite a lot of games for the U15s and the U17s last year. The U15 season culminated with calling, I think, about 10 games at the U15 championships, and the Thunderbirds were the ones that came out on top. So that was really special for me, getting to call the championship game. We were able to be on the ice with the team. We were given championship hats, as you see here. We were given gold medals. So that was really special for me. And I'm really looking forward to this season as the U18s. I will be taking over them as well, as of course Jordan has moved on to the Wolfpack. And the U18s are hosting the TELUS Cup this year. So the national championships out in Chilliwack. I haven't gotten official word yet. Still got to talk to a few people, but I'm hoping to at least call a few games of the TELUS Cup, and I hope that the hometown team is able to capture the championship.
That kind of does sway into my upcoming question. What is the upcoming season looking like for Blake Milton?
Yeah, it's not as busy actually as last year. Last year with being trainer for the Knights, kind of they needed a role, and I decided I'd fill it. But it was quite busy. I was at the rink almost every night. I helped out the White Rock Whalers a bit, and then of course with being the with the Thunderbirds and the Steelers as well. I've decided to kind of take a step back. So I've told the Whalers that I will not be returning, but I'm still going to be with the Thunderbirds and the Knights, and I'm thinking I'll still be with the Steelers. Maybe not as much, but I'll still be there in some capacity. But yeah, it's looking forward to the TELUS Cup. Looking forward to maybe getting in the broadcast booth with Jamie, and really looking forward to Gaten and I being reunited once again.
This leads into my next question as well, Blake. But throughout your time broadcasting from the very first game that you called up until this point and going forward, what lessons has this journey taught you about yourself?
Oh man, Jag, that's a really good question. Um, it's taught me to believe in myself. Like I know that that very first game I called, there's still a CD somewhere in this house that I'm in currently of that very first game of me broadcasting, and I was pretty raw. I think, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the date now. I want to say it was like November the 13th, 2018, maybe. It was the Steelers against the Aldergrove Kodiaks, and it wasn't my best game. I'll say that. It was I'm sure there was some names mispronounced and stuff that I kind of overstated and stuff like that. But as the years have gone on, I think, at least I hope, I've had people tell me that I've gotten better, and but at the same time, in saying that, like I know that I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes. I still mispronounce names. Like it's gonna happen. There's a lot of names where I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to say that. Like I'm just gonna give it my best shot. One of the biggest examples, the last season at those U15 championships with the Fraser Valley Thunderbirds. Of course, there was a lot of WHL scouts looking at those players for the upcoming draft and stuff like that. And I had a scout come up to me and he says, you're saying a player's name wrong, right? And I was like, who? And he tells me the player's name, and I was like, really? Like I've been the broadcaster for this team all season, and I've been saying it this way. And he's like, yeah, you're saying it wrong. So stuff like that is still gonna happen, but I hope that I'm getting better each and every day, and I know that I'm not done yet. Like my dream, one day to, like yourself, is hopefully call a game in the BCHL, maybe call a Vancouver Giants game, and I hope one day maybe even call an NHL game. That's a goal. Doesn't have to be NHL, maybe sports in general, even if it's a CFL game, an NBA game, something like that. But my goal still remains to be a professional broadcaster.
You talk about the CFL as well. And just before we go, Blake, I think I have to get your opinions and your thoughts on this because it's been quite a big week for the BC Lions. And I know you're quite the expert when it comes to the BC Lions now, but we all know the elephant in the room. Nathan Rourke is back with the BC Lions. This upcoming Sunday, there's a BC Lions game. And I have to ask you, what does this mean for Vernon Adams Jr.?
Um, that's a really good question, Jag. That's something that hasn't really been answered yet. From what I have been able to hear, the Lions aren't planning on trading Vernon Adams Jr. until, or at least until the end of this off season, or the end of this season, I should say. And of course, there's no guarantees in the CFL. Like, I think it's kind of, or at least right now, Vernon Adams is, of course, hurt. So I think Nathan, the plan is for him to start on Sunday against the Bombers. He'll be the starter until Vernon Adams is fully healthy. And then when that comes, I don't know what the plan is, whether they maybe throw some packages together. There is, of course, that CFL rule where you're allowed to have two quarterbacks on the field at the same time. So who knows? Maybe down in the future, the rest of the season, we'll get a pass from Nathan Rourke to Vernon Adams for a touchdown. That'd be pretty cool, Jag. But yeah, I think probably after this season, especially with Nathan now signing a new 3-year contract, I would suspect that the Lions are probably going to try and trade Vernon Adams in the offseason, but it's not going to be an easy thing. Like, teams know now that the Lions most likely are going to have to trade Vernon. He also signed a 3-year contract this past offseason. So after this year, he'll have 2 years left on his contract. And I guess it's really just dependent on the other 8 CFL teams and what they want to do with their quarterback situation.
Yeah, a pass from Rourke to VA would certainly be something. Blake, I appreciate you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I know it's busy times right now, but for you to sit down and have a chat with me, man, I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jag. I really enjoyed coming on.
That's Blake Milton, the voice of the Grandview Steelers, and among many other teams, he will certainly have a busy season coming up in hockey season. Blake, I look forward to seeing you again very soon. And to all of our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. Please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and we'll catch you on the next one.